Hey, Mike here. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Dark Poutine early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. Welcome back to Dark Poutine. I am Mike Brown.
And I'm Matthew.
You are Matthew, and on the floor, snoring away, as per usual, is your dog, Steve.
Right at my feet.
Right at your feet. Is he still farty?
No, now he's just snory.
Poor little guy. I love Steve. I just love him so much.
Snory boy.
He's one of my favorite dogs.
He is his own character, isn't he?
Yeah, he definitely is a character.
I've never met a dog with, like, all dogs have character, but this guy has character.
He's got some chutzpah. He really, really does. Well, let's get on with this one. This one's a little different, a little strange, a little weird.
Kind of like you.
A little like me, yeah.
But those are all good things.
I guess so. One day they'll pay off, apparently.
Apparently.
That's what I'm told.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during the Dark Poutine podcast are solely those of the producer and do not necessarily represent those of Curious Cast, its affiliate, Global News, nor their parent company, Chorus Entertainment.
Dark Poutine is not for the faint of heart or squeamish. Listener discretion is strongly advised. We're not experts on the topics we present, nor are we journalists. We're two ordinary Canadian schmucks chatting about crime and the dark side of history. Let's get to it. Put on your toque, grab yourself a double-double and a Nanaimo bar. It's time to scarf down some Dark Poutine.
You are responsible for obtaining and maintaining at your own cost all equipment needed to listen to Dark Poutine. Dark Poutine can be addictive. Side effects may include, but not be limited to, pausing and questioning the system, elevated heart rate, pondering humanity, odd looks from colleagues as you laugh out loud at work, family members not into true crime worrying about you. Positive side effects may include some perspectives and opinions that you disagree with, as well as some wokeness and empathy. If you don't think Dark Poutine is for you, consult your doctor immediately.
If you drive the prairie roads south of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, your eyes adjust to an ocean of grass and sky. Out here, the horizon stretches so far the land seems to bend with the earth. Grain elevators punctuate the distance like sentinels. Poplar windbreaks, planted by early settlers, stand in ragged lines, their leaves whispering in the steady wind. It's a landscape that can make you feel both small and free. And yet in the middle of these wheat-colored plains, there's a sight that stops travelers cold. A steel-hulled ship sitting high and dry on the grass. The first reaction is always the same. How did a sea-going vessel end up here? This is the Sontiainen, the work of Finnish immigrant Tom Sukanen. He spent years building it on this land, hundreds of kilometers from salt water, with the idea of sailing it home to Finland. It sounds like the start of a folk tale. It isn't. The man, the ship, and the dream were all real, and so was the heartbreak that came with them. You're listening to Dark Poutine episode 384, Noah of Saskatchewan, the Tom Sukanen Saga. Tom was born Tomi Joonas Alankola in 1878 in Kyrienkala, a small Finnish village in what was then the Grand Duchy of Finland under Russian rule. Kyrienkala was the sort of place where the Baltic Sea was not just a view but a part of life. Families fished for herring and salmon, ferried goods in small boats, and built their own vessels from local timber. Boys learned to row before they could shave. They learned to mend nets, plane planks, and caulk seams against the cold water. Finland in Tom's youth was poor and mostly rural. Farms were small, inheritance was tight, and younger sons often looked elsewhere for a future. By the 1890s, letters from relatives in North America spoke of land and wages that were hard to imagine back home. The pull grew strong enough to be called American Kumi, America Fever. In 1898, at 20, Tom joined the tide west. He boarded a ship for North America and rode the rails inland. He would never again live in Finland, but the idea of returning would anchor his thoughts for the rest of his life.
Yeah, I think lots of immigrants dream of going home, and most don't.
Yeah.
What's cool is Tom just never let go of the idea, even when it stopped making sense.
Well, I mean, I look at myself. I'm an immigrant to BC from Nova Scotia.
And I often think about going home.
Go back to where you came from.
Oh, no. I think about going back a lot. I really do.
I think about going back to London a lot.
Yeah. Well, London, England.
Yeah. Feels more like home to me than anywhere else that I've lived.
I love that city. I can see why you have such an affinity for it. Once in North America, Tom settled in Minnesota among Finnish-speaking enclaves that dotted the state. These communities built co-op stores, social halls, and Lutheran churches. Finnish newspapers carried news from both continents. Tom married a Finnish woman, and they started a family. Farming there meant clearing stumps, breaking heavy soil, and working through short summers and long winters. He also earned a reputation for mechanical skill, the sort of person neighbors called when something needed fixing. For a time, life held together. Then, for reasons recorded only in fragments, Tom decided to seek more land and opportunity in Canada. The Dominion Lands Act offered 160 acres for a $10 fee if a settler proved up. Build a dwelling, live on the land, and cultivate at least 30 acres within 3 years. In 1911, Tom went north to Saskatchewan to start again. He filed a claim near McCrory, southwest of Saskatoon, wheat country rolling toward the South Saskatchewan River. Out here, the prairie can be harsh and beautiful in the same hour. Winter set the land in white silence. Summer bleached the fields. Drought years sent dust across the sky. Tom set to work. He broke the soil, built a home, and repaired his own equipment. He likely imagined sending for his wife and children once he was established. That never happened. His wife died back in Minnesota. His children went into foster care. When he tried to bring his young son to Canada, U.S. officials refused to release the boy. From then on, Tom lived alone.
Being left alone like that explains a lot. You know, I think the ship gave him something to keep going when there wasn't really much else.
Fair enough.
It became his friend, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Neighbors knew Tom as quiet, self-reliant, and strong. He could mend almost anything. A Finnish saying about a gifted handyman is that his thumb is not in the middle of his palm. One account preserves that exact phrase about Tom, a nod to his ability to make and fix tools and machines. Before the Depression, the farm did well. Local recollections say he kept livestock and had money in the bank. Then the dirty 30s ground over the prairies and turned security into scarcity. In that climate of dust and worry, Tom's private hope turned into a plan. Tom decided how he would go home. He would build a ship where he stood, launch it into the South Saskatchewan River, and sail it east. Downstream, he would join the North Saskatchewan near Prince Albert, follow it toward Cedar Lake, and cross Lake Winnipeg. From there, the Nelson River would lead to Hudson Bay. In saltwater, he could prepare for ocean travel and then set out for Finland. According to later accounts preserved in local memory and journalism, Tom did more than study a map. He was said to have taken a rowboat along sections of the South Saskatchewan to scout the route, and he spoke in detail about how he would deal with the shallowest reaches and rapids. He began to build. He named the ship Sontiainen, Finnish for dung beetle, a small, stubborn creature that rolls a heavy burden inch by inch. As the hull rose, people talked. The Depression had tightened belts to the last notch. Dust storms scoured the fields. In that hard time, the sight of a man shipping in steel and lumber for a boat drew scorn as much as curiosity. One period account put the community's reaction in plain language. Quote, "He's building an ark," they laughed. "It's going to rain 40 days and 40 nights, they joked. "Where'd this Noah get the money? What a damn fool waste." End quote.
Yeah, so people are laughing, sure, but you know, the truth is everybody was desperate back then.
Yeah.
in the prairies, and sometimes mocking the dreamer is easier than admitting you wish you had their focus, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I never mock people that are just trying to do the thing.
There's all kinds of examples of people just doing their thing. This is one of them. What we do. It's just me doing my thing. This is just me doing my thing. You know, haters gonna hate, I guess.
A photograph from the time shows the shell, red hull mounted on white keel, rising above the prairie grass, a 13-meter shape that seemed to belong to another world. Yet Tom kept building.
Well, that's cool. He wasn't just tinkering. Think about this. He was serious. He was following old traditions. The ship was actually going to see the ocean one day.
Yeah. I mean, Finland, because of its location, there's a lot of folklore around the ocean and that kind of thing. Various nature deities. There's forest gods, Tapio and Velamo, the water goddess, and all that kind of stuff. So whenever I hear about little traditions like this, I think about that stuff, and I love mythology.
I've been to Finland once.
Once? Oh, yeah. What did you do in Finland?
I went to see a doctor.
What? A doctor in Finland?
In this small town called Lappeenranta.
Okay.
I took a train from Moscow
Okay, yep.
to Lappeenranta, got off the train and saw there were some lights in the distance, and it was like, you know, when it's so cold there are crystals in the air.
I love that, yeah.
And I just started walking towards the lights, like over this hill, going, that must be the town.
What did you experience there in Finland? Did you have some food? Did you, besides going to the doctor, did you do anything? Or were you just so drunk you can't remember?
I wasn't drunk at all. I got off the train, got to a little hotel, slept, got up, saw the doctor, got my medication, got back on a train and went back to Moscow.
You didn't spend any time there?
No.
Other than just going to see the doctor? Oh, well, fair enough. Would you go back? Is it something that you would like to see again, maybe?
Oh, yeah. Of course, I'd love to see more of Finland.
Tom's design had a logic born of the geography he faced. The main hull would be a steel-framed vessel of about 40 feet. A separate barge would carry coal, food, and gear. In deep water, he could couple the two. In shallow stretches, he could separate them. He described a plan to mount a small engine and propeller on the barge and use it to tow the watertight hull on its side through the trickiest reaches of the river system. Once in Hudson Bay, where depths and space were greater, he would reassemble, ballast the keel with rock, and right the ship in salt water. Locals who came by to watch didn't always know what to make of it. Some thought he was out of his mind. Others simply watched the work, impressed by the skill on display. The context mattered. Families were leaving failed farms with whatever could fit in a wagon. Against that backdrop, a steel ship looked either brave or blind. The work itself was slow and exacting. Without industrial riveters, every hole was drilled by hand, every fastener set with a hammer's blows. Progress was measured in hours and in inches. But if you watched Tom for any length of time, you could see the picture he carried. The hull afloat, the barge laden, the river carrying them east toward salt water. The ship rose while the world around it seemed to fall apart. The drought did not let up. Wheat failed and was plowed under. Grasshoppers arrived in waves. Dust seeped into houses through the tiniest cracks. People left. Some neighbors joked to soften the ache. Others snapped under it. There were suicides in farm outbuildings. One account remembers wives afraid to go and look for missing husbands. In that setting, Tom's project could look like defiance or denial. A local boy who visited the site as a teenager in the late 1930s remembered believing that the dream might work if only. Even people who laughed could not ignore the work. It took on its own gravity, an iron shape on the grass that insisted on being taken seriously. One practical detail bothered the scoffers most: distance. The South Saskatchewan River was not at the edge of Tom's field. It was a long way off, about 26 kilometers as the crow flies. The nearest ocean lay at least 1,000 kilometers beyond that. People pointed this out, and Tom pointed back to his two-part plan. He did not intend to sail down the South Saskatchewan. He intended to tow the ship and portage it until he had the water he needed. Whatever your view of the plan, there was still the fundamental problem of getting the hull from his yard to the river. For that, Tom built the path himself. He laid out lines of wooden rollers made from fence posts and saplings. He set a hand-cranked winch and a dead man anchor in the soil. Then he began to move the Sontiainen in short, punishing pulls. A good day might gain a few dozen meters. A bad day gave nothing but sweat and bruises. Summer sun hardened the ground to brick. Storms turned it to mud. The work was not just heavy, it was lonely, measured by the creak of timbers and the slow clack of a ratchet. People stopped to look. A few helped. Many laughed. He barely seemed to hear them. The route to water was in his mind the way a path is in a homing animal, invisible to everyone else but sure. There were gestures in Tom's work that pointed back to Finland as clearly as a postcard. The horse blood wash under the hull was one. Old shipwrights believed such a coating would help keep rot at bay and, just as importantly, set the vessel on a lucky path. Another was the habit of naming a craft with meaning. Sontiainen was not just a joke, it carried the sense of patient force. Finns have a word for that kind of endurance under pressure. Sisu. It isn't a mood, it's a backbone quality, grit over time. Materials on the prairie were whatever you could lay hands on. Tom bought some steel, but he also lived by salvage. A broken thresher might give up a plate or a shaft. An abandoned granary might yield oak. He cut, drilled, and peened every joint by hand. Where a shipyard would have had powered riveters and gangs of men, Tom had a tripod stand, a forge, and the time he was willing to spend. If something didn't fit, he remade it. If a tool didn't exist, he forged it. In that sense, the shipyard was not a place. It was the maker's will. Context matters. In the mid-1930s, families across southern Saskatchewan were hanging on by their fingernails. Dust stained quilts gray in the morning. Grasshoppers chewed green shoots to stubs. Farm auctions were weekly facts of life. In that setting, the sight of a steel ship rising from a farmyard looked either like sanity's bright edge or its far limit. Even people who laughed could not ignore the scale of the thing. Tom kept building through the talk. He was not much for explanations. He worked, he tested, and he worked again. When someone told him the river was low and getting lower, he pointed to the barge plan. When they said the ocean was too far, he lifted the next plate into place. There is a moment in any ambitious project when the dream reaches its peak, when the goal is clear, the plan complete, and the will to push is unbroken. For Tom, that moment was here, on the prairie, with the Sontiainen ready to creep toward the river. The dream is alive. The ship is nearly ready for its first long pull. In the second half, we enter the more challenging part of the story: legal trouble, dwindling water resources, and a body and mind worn down by years of work. Sadly, the hull would long outlast the man who built it. More after a quick break. And we are back. Matthew, thoughts on this so far?
Yeah, so you can call this obsession or madness, but you've got to remember what his life looked like, right? He lost his wife. He couldn't get his kids back, trying to survive some of the hardest years of the prairies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these were hard years in the prairies, and for most people, there was no way out, but Tom kind of built himself one, even if it was impossible. The ship wasn't about water and distance. It was about, in a lot of ways, holding on to hope when everything else was gone, and that's why I like this story.
It gave him something to look forward to.
It was about hope, right? And
Yeah.
Sure, it never touched the ocean, but we're still talking about it, and we're talking about him almost a century later, and that says something.
Yeah.
The dream didn't work out the way he planned, but it kept him alive for as long as it could, and now it keeps the story alive for us. I think this is a great story.
I love it, yeah. I love these kind of stories a lot. When we left off, the Sontiainen stood finished in the middle of the Saskatchewan prairie, and Tom Sukanen was hauling it inch by inch toward the South Saskatchewan River. His improbable dream still had life in it, but the years ahead would test it and him to breaking point. The Sontiainen was no light craft. Its steel hull stretched over 13 meters and weighed several tons. Tom's moving system was simple in theory, but punishing in execution. Wooden rollers made from fence posts placed under the keel and a hand-cranked winch anchored in the soil. Each forward gain meant stopping to reset the rollers, reset the winch, and strain at the crank again.
Think about that, sort of no engine, no horses. Obviously, he killed them for the blood or something. Just it's him and a winch. You know, that's sheer stubbornness.
Yeah.
Right? And It's that sort of work is hard to picture this day. We have so many tools now.
Yeah.
You know?
This story actually reminds me of the Werner Herzog movie, Fitzcarraldo. Have you ever seen that?
You and Werner Herzog.
Me and Werner Herzog. I love him. So the film stars Klaus Kinski as Brian Sweeney Fitzgerald, a would-be Irish rubber baron in Peru, as Fitzcarraldo, who is determined...
Rubber baron or robber baron?
Rubber baron.
Okay.
Who is determined to transport a steamship over the Andes Mountains to access a rich rubber territory in the Amazon basin. And the character was inspired by Peruvian rubber baron Carlos Fitzcarrald, who once had disassembled a steamboat and transported it over the Isthmus of Fitzcarrald by natives. So it's based kind of on a true story.
The Isthmus?
Yes. Isthmus. I have a hard time with that word.
Me too.
But yeah, so this, it is one man's obsession to get something strange from one place to the other, something almost impossible. So if you want to see something more cinematic than this podcast about the Noah of Saskatchewan, look at Fitzcarraldo, Werner Herzog's movie. And there was also a documentary about the troubled production around it called Burden of Dreams, because the whole movie was essentially Herzog doing what this guy was trying to do with the steamboat to get this movie done. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
Anyway, let's get away from the German Werner Herzog and back to our Finnish Tom Sukanen. According to the Sukanen Museum Oral Histories, one local man later summed it up. He had no engine, no horses, just himself. That boat was moving like a glacier. How far he got is still debated. Some neighbors insisted he shifted it a few kilometers. Others said it never left his land. Either way, it never saw the river. In Depression-era Saskatchewan, even motorized equipment struggled with large loads. Rural roads were rutted dirt, sometimes nothing more than wagon tracks. After rain, they turned to gumbo, clinging like glue to wheels and hooves. In dry heat, the ground baked to concrete, jolting every axle. Hauling something as heavy as the Sontiainen without an engine or a team was, frankly, near impossible. By the mid-1930s, Saskatchewan was reeling from the Great Depression and drought. In some years, rainfall was less than half the normal amount. Windstorms carried away the topsoil in rolling black clouds. The Regina Leader-Post described the scene in 1937. Skies so black at midday that lamps were lit in kitchens, crops beaten into the dust by hot winds. Grasshoppers swarmed in thick waves, devouring crops, fence posts, and even laundry hung out to dry. Families abandoned farms, loading their possessions onto wagons or trucks and heading elsewhere. Against this backdrop, Tom's work on a ship seemed either heroic or absurd. According to the website Canada's History, a neighbor recalled, quote, "We'd go by and see him on that crank. Maybe it was the only thing keeping him alive." End quote. Scrap metal was a precious resource in the 1930s. It was sold for cash, swapped for supplies, or repurposed for machinery repairs. At some point, Tom was accused of taking metal from another property. Some accounts suggest he had permission at first, which was later withdrawn. Others claim he simply scavenged without asking. On the prairie, accusations like that could turn a man into an outcast. Even without charges, suspicion could cut him off from the already thin thread of community support he had. In 1939, whether because of the scrap dispute, concern for his well-being, or perceptions about his mental state, Tom was sent to the Saskatchewan Hospital in North Battleford. The surviving records don't say whether this was voluntary or court-mandated, but he would never leave.
Plenty of people broke during the Depression.
Sure, yeah.
And for Tom, it sort of showed up in a way nobody could ignore, right? Everyone, a lot of people they're quietly breaking. He had this big steel hull sitting out there, right, while his own life is falling apart.
Yeah. I was driving with a friend yesterday. He and I were traveling together, and he told me about his grandfather and some wise words his grandfather said to him one time. And his grandpa had lived through the Depression and, was a farmer. And so it wasn't a pleasant time for him. And he said, there's been 3 times in my life where I've had to start from scratch. And every time I get back to where I was before. Don't let yourself get too far down the hole. Just pick yourself up and move ahead. I think that's the message.
You just keep going. What's the other option? Go play in the traffic?
Yeah, right? As my mother used to say, go play in the water face down.
Oh, nice. Did she say that to you?
No, of course not. She did say go play in the traffic, though.
Saying bad things about your mom.
I'm just kidding around. My mom was great. The facility Tom was sent to opened in 1914, designed for long-term care and self-sufficiency. At its peak, it held over 1,500 patients and ran its own farm, workshops, and laundry. In the 1930s and 1940s, treatment often meant routine work and confinement. Hydrotherapy, occupational therapy, electroconvulsive therapy, and insulin coma therapy were in use. Privacy was rare, and many patients, especially those without family advocates, spent the rest of their lives there. We don't know how Tom spent his days inside. No letters or diaries survive. Whether he talked about the Sontiainen or kept it locked in his mind is unknown. What is clear is that his independence was gone. With Tom gone, the Sontiainen sat exposed to the prairie's extremes. Summer heat expanded the metal, while winter freezes contracted it, loosening bolts and opening seams. Paint peeled under relentless wind. Snow piled high against the hull, melting in spring to pool around the keel and accelerate rust. It became an unofficial playground. Children dared each other to climb aboard or drop pebbles down the smokestack. Hunters used it for target practice. According to Sukanen Museum oral histories, one man remembered you could hear a .22 hit that steel from half a mile away and it rang like a bell. I can neither confirm nor deny that my friends and I shot at abandoned things in Nova Scotia. To heck with it, we did. Yeah. Scavengers stripped parts from the ship for farm repairs, steel plates for machinery, bolts and fittings for barns. By the early 1940s, the once proud vessel was already a shadow of its original self. Tom Sukanen died in 1943, aged 65, still a patient in North Battleford. He was buried in the hospital cemetery in an unmarked grave among hundreds of others. No obituary marked his passing. In the community he'd lived among for decades, there was barely a whisper that he was gone.
Yeah, he kind of died in silence, didn't he? But what's cool is the ship kept standing.
Right. It's still there.
In some ways, it's like that's shouting louder than anything, right? It's shouting louder than the neighbors who were dissing him, right? It's that ship became this message and this voice, right?
Mm-hmm. For the next 30 years, the Sontiainen remained in that field. The grass grew taller around it, rust spread. Photographs from the 1960s show yawning holes where panels had been removed and weeds sprouting through the deck. The story slipped into local folklore. Children whispered about the ghost of the crazy Finn watching over his ship, or hammering sounds on windy nights. Few believed the tales, but they gave the abandoned vessel an air of mystery. By the early 1970s, the Sontiainen was little more than a rusting shell, its seams gaping, much of its hardware stripped. That was when a group of Moose Jaw history enthusiasts decided the ship deserved a better fate. In 1974, members of the Moose Jaw Antique and Classic Car Club, already experienced in restoring old machinery, took on the challenge. The project was as much about civic pride as preservation. Many volunteers had grown up hearing stories about the ship in the field, and the thought of it collapsing into scrap was unthinkable. The dismantling process began that summer. The hull plates, stiffened by decades of prairie heat and cold, resisted every attempt to shift them. Torch cutters and grinders became essential tools. Volunteers labeled and photographed each piece before loading it for the short trip to the newly established Sukanen Ship Pioneer Village and Museum, about 13 kilometers south of Moose Jaw. It was dirty, exhausting work. As one club member later told the Moose Jaw Times-Herald in 1977, quote, "We'd finish a day covered head to toe in rust flakes, but we all knew we were saving something no one else in the world had, a prairie ship with a story as big as the prairies themselves." End quote. Once the ship arrived at the museum grounds, the reassembly began. Working from photographs, sketches, and memory, the team rebuilt the Sontiainen plate by plate, bolt by bolt. Where original components were missing or beyond repair, local welders fabricated replacements in their own shops and donated them. The project became a community touchstone.
Retired farmers, mechanics, and curious schoolchildren stopped by to watch. Some offered coffee and sandwiches to the workers, others dropped off small donations to cover supplies. By the time the work was finished, the Sontiainen had become more than just a relic. It was a shared piece of local heritage, brought back to life by the very community that had once watched its builder struggle alone on the prairie. Once the Sontiainen stood tall again on the museum grounds, attention turned to the man who had built her. For more than 3 decades, Tom Sukanen had lain in an unmarked grave in the Saskatchewan Hospital Cemetery at North Battleford, a patch of grass among hundreds with no stone to tell his story. By the late 1970s, museum volunteers and local historians felt strongly that Tom's final resting place should match the dignity of the vessel he had created. Through fundraising events, small private donations, and in-kind support from local businesses, they secured the resources to relocate his remains. The exhumation was carried out quietly, with only a handful of people present. The hospital cemetery's records, often sparse or incomplete, were combed for the precise location of Tom's grave. A simple pine coffin was prepared for the transfer. When he arrived at the museum grounds, Tom was laid to rest just a short walk from the Sontiainen. The burial was modest but deeply symbolic. Those present included restoration volunteers, members of the Finnish Canadian community, and locals who remembered the ship from its years in the field. A pastor offered a brief blessing, and those gathered stood in silence under the wide prairie sky. A plain, granite headstone was placed at the site, engraved simply, Tom Sukanen, 1878 to 1943. One longtime volunteer described the moment to a reporter. It felt like we were putting things right. For years his ship sat alone out there, and so did he. Now they're together again, and both have a place in the story of this place. End quote.
And he never got home to Finland, but at least I'm kind of happy that he gets to rest beside the ship.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of nice.
It is nice.
Today, visitors often pause at the grave before or after touring the ship. The pairing creates a tangible connection between man and vessel, a reminder that behind the steel plates and rivets was a human being who dreamed of crossing oceans from the heart of the prairie. Tom's life and the Sontiainen have since inspired novels, plays, documentaries, and endless retellings. Andreas Schroeder's 1986 novel, Dust Ship Glory, is the best-known fictionalized version, weaving fact with imagined dialogue and inner thoughts. Stage adaptations have been performed at Saskatchewan summer festivals, often paired with guided tours of the ship itself. CBC Radio and regional TV have produced documentary segments on the vessel, often framing it as a symbol of prairie resilience and of obsession. At the museum, the story is presented in bilingual displays in English and Finnish. For Finnish Canadians, as we mentioned, Tom embodies sisu, stubborn determination in the face of impossible odds. For others, the story is a cautionary one about how a dream can take over a life. A museum curator once told a reporter, quote, "The ship is what you bring to it, a dream, a folly, a monument, but you can't leave without feeling something," end quote. Historians remain divided on whether Tom's voyage could have succeeded. Skeptics point to the shallow, winding rivers, the arduous portages needed to bypass rapids, and the dangerous ice conditions of Hudson Bay. Supporters argue that with enough preparation and seasonal timing, the journey wasn't entirely impossible, just improbable for one man alone.
Yeah, but historians look back, right?
Yeah.
And his ship took a much longer voyage than historians give him credit for, right?
It's true. Yeah.
The ship carried his memory all the way up till now. So this ship's been on a voyage for over 80 years.
Yeah.
And he did it alone, so I think this ship traveled way more than anyone could have imagined.
What is certain about his dream is that Tom believed it was possible, and that belief kept him working long after most would have abandoned the idea. The Sontiainen remains the centerpiece of the Sukanen ship Pioneer Village and Museum. Visitors can walk its decks, run their hands along the riveted steel, and imagine the voyage it never took. Inside, display cases show Tom's handmade tools, notes, and period photographs of the ship's construction. On festival weekends, the grounds bustle with antique tractor parades, vintage car shows, and blacksmithing demonstrations. Yet it is the ship that draws the longest, most thoughtful stares. People stand quietly, tracing the lines of the hull, perhaps imagining what it would have looked like sliding into the current of the South Saskatchewan River. Tom Sukanen's ship never reached Finland, it never even reached the river, but its journey from an abandoned dream on a patch of prairie to a preserved artifact seen by thousands has made it a vessel of another kind, one that carries a story across time. For some, that story is about ambition and grit. For others, it's about isolation and the thin line between dedication and obsession. Either way, the Sontiainen stands as proof that even unfinished journeys can leave lasting wakes. There have been other eccentric dreamer stories in the same spirit as Tom Sukanen's Sontiainen. We spoke of Granger Taylor and his Vancouver Island UFO in episode 60, but there have been others. Like Tom Sukanen on the Saskatchewan prairie and Granger Taylor here in BC, Ken Carter was a man who staked everything on a vision most people thought was impossible. Both men built their dreams out of steel and stubbornness, laboring year after year while friends, neighbors, and strangers looked on with a mix of awe and doubt. Sukanen wanted to sail to Finland from the middle of the continent. Carter wanted to fly a car over one of the widest rivers in North America. Neither reached their goal, but the scale of their ambition turned failure into legend. Ken Carter was born Kenneth Gordon Polzek in Montreal in 1938. A showman at heart, he worked as a taxi driver before turning to stunt driving in the 1960s. Billed as the Mad Canadian, Carter made a career out of leaping over lines of cars, buses, and other obstacles in souped-up vehicles, touring across North America to perform for crowds hungry for daredevil thrills. By the mid-1970s, Carter set his sights on a feat unlike anything attempted before, jumping a mile-wide section of the St. Lawrence River in a rocket-powered Lincoln Continental. The plan was as bold as it was dangerous. The car would race down a specially built ramp more than 1,400 feet long, accelerate to over 270 kilometers per hour, launch into the air, and, if all went right, clear the river from Morrisburg, Ontario to New York State in a single bound. Construction of the ramp began in 1976 on farmland near Morrisburg. Carter poured years into the project, securing sponsorships and financial backing from Canadian investors and eventually from ABC's Wide World of Sports. By the time the ramp was complete, it towered above the surrounding countryside, its incline and length dwarfing anything built for a car jump before or since. The jump was postponed repeatedly between 1976 and 1979 due to weather, mechanical problems, and safety concerns. Each delay strained relations with sponsors and drained Carter's funds. The mounting frustration reached a breaking point in September 1979 when Carter was away for a medical checkup. Without his consent, American stuntman Kenny Powers attempted the jump in Carter's place. Powers' car disintegrated in midair and he crashed into the riverbank on the Canadian side. He survived but suffered severe injuries, including a broken back. Carter was furious but undeterred. He continued to dream of making the leap, though the sponsorship money and public momentum had largely evaporated. In 1981, the National Film Board of Canada released The Devil at Your Heels, a feature-length documentary chronicling Carter's years-long quest, the construction of the ramp, the failed Powers attempt, and Carter's unshakable belief that the jump was possible. The film captured both the scale of his ambition and the personal cost of chasing it. Ken Carter never did make the St. Lawrence jump. In 1983, he died while attempting another stunt, a rocket-powered leap over a pond in Peterborough, Ontario. His car overshot the landing ramp and he was killed instantly. He was 44 years old. Today, Carter's name still circulates among stunt enthusiasts and in Canadian pop culture. His ramp in Morrisburg is long gone, but the footage of its towering frame and the audacity of his vision remain. Canada has never lacked for dreamers, and Tom Sukanen, Ken Carter, and Granger Taylor each chased visions that defied the limits of their time and place. Sukanen built an ocean-going ship hundreds of kilometers from the nearest coast. Carter spent years preparing to leap a river in a rocket-powered car. Taylor crafted a life around machines, built his own UFO, and left a note saying he was joining a voyage among the stars. Sukanen's ship, Carter's ramp, Taylor's note, none reached their intended destination, yet all three still travel in the telling. They remind us that even when a dream falls short, the story it leaves behind can carry us farther than we ever planned to go.
And that echoes what you were saying already.
You know, it's so funny when a dream, like when something doesn't pay off the way you want it to, but it pays off in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of stand and wonder at, stories like this just make me realize how quirky and weird and fascinating people can be.
Yeah, it's true.
People like this just fascinate me.
Well, yeah, it's why I tell these stories, because they fascinate me too. I love it. I love it.
And that's it for Dark Poutine episode 384, Noah of Saskatchewan, the Tom Sukanen Saga.
That's right. It's time for voicemails. You can leave us a message at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you. Let's see who called us this week.
Here is our first voicemail, Matthew. Let's have a listen.
Hi, Mike and Matthew. I just wanted to say I'm calling you from Barker's Point, New Brunswick, and I just want to say thank you for covering the Hammertown story, as it's very much still part of our collective awareness in Fredericton. And so, thank you for covering that. I remember even moving to Barker's Point. It was like, oh, that's Hammertown. You can't move there. Thank you for the story and all of the aspects of it, and go shake your hat.
Well, thank you very much. So, yeah, she was talking about Fredericton's last execution, the murder of Norman Burgoyne, and the two from Hammertown were George and Rufus Hamilton, the two men who were hanged. So what do you think she does there in Fredericton, Matthew? Any thoughts on that?
It's hammer time. I think she does, what do you call that when bands, she's a cover band. She's cover band for MC Hammer.
There you go. So don't touch this. Yeah.
It's hammer time.
Hammer time.
It's Hammertown.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. That sounds fun. I would go see that.
So would I.
Yeah, why not? Here's another voicemail.
Hey, I'm just realizing I forgot to say my name in the last voicemail. My name is Riker Jackson Longheart. And I just finished your episode on two layers of justice, or let me just look. I do not have the two flavors of justice, and that was a really good episode. And I, person who has struggled with mental illness in the past, I really like that perspective, and I believe it's Matt points with like balancing out the treatment versus punishment kind of thing, and I agree, like that should be more considered in the Canadian justice system. But yeah, thank you for having this one. It's really cool, and thank you for being a very cool show podcast, and thank you all for being a part of my day-to-day. Hope you have a good one, and I can't wait to scarf down some more dark poutine.
Awesome.
There you go. There's a good slogan for scarfs down some dark poutine.
Well, if you listen to the opening of the show, Matthew, if you ever listen to the
do
opening,
we say that?
I say that in the opening of the show.
I've never heard I don't listen to
Matthew doesn't listen to the show. He used to, but
over 3 years ago.
Yeah. But yeah, I've been saying that ever since the beginning.
Oh, do we say scarf down some dark poutine?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, well, I was giving him the credit of a good slogan for us there.
Yeah, no, it is definitely already a slogan.
What else do you say at the beginning of the show?
Oh, I say all kinds of things.
Okay.
Maybe you should listen.
No.
Matthew just hates to hear his own voice. That's a joke between us. Anyway, Rick also called about something in our suggestion box. So from his hometown of Fort Smith, and I got your suggestion. So I'm looking into things, and I might email you back. You'll see. Anyway, so thank you. What do you think he does there in Fort Smith, Matthew.
Advertising copywriter.
Advertising copywriter. So that's why he's so keyed into me saying, scarf down some dark. It's time to scarf down some dark poutine. Before the music comes on, that's what I say.
I'm not going to give you the credit. I'm going to say that Rick did. Rick did that.
Okay, wait. He wrote it for me years ago. Then
exactly. Thank you, Rick.
Sure.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks, Rick. Okay, I'm good with that, I guess. Anyway, we've got one more.
Hey, Matt and Mike. This is Jane calling from St. John, New Brunswick. I just happened to find you guys one day when I was looking for podcasts, and because I like dark things and I like poutine, I thought I'd check it out, and I'm so glad I did. I love the way that you cover Canadian crime and the level of respect that you provide the people that you're talking about, and not glorifying the crime, but really reflecting on the situation and the folks that have lost their lives, unfortunately. Part of the reason why I'm calling is I have connections to two of the stories. So I was listening to the murder of Norman Burgoyne a couple of weeks ago, and it all seemed really familiar to me. And then I started doing some research, and when you said that he was 5'1", the bell went off in my head, and I went, I bet you I know who he is. And so I checked out one of my girlfriend's father's obituary, because he was a small man, and I was like, there can't be too many Burgoynes who are small. And sure enough, his father's name was Norman, and his mother's name was Irene. And so I grew up with the granddaughter of Norman Burgoyne. And then the other story is that my sister worked on the response that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau gave to the military servicemen from the LGBTQ2 plus community. And I was in Ottawa one day just right before the for a speech, and I was out for lunch with my sister, and she said some of the stories that she had to do when she would read when she was doing her research were just so horrific. And so she really took that one to heart, and it was a hard project for her to work on as a member of the community, but also it would be just hard for anyone to have to read some of those things. So anyway, that is it for me, and I've been meaning to call. So anyway, hope you guys are doing great, and go shit in your hat. Bye.
Thank you so much, Jane from St. John, New Brunswick. What does Jane do there, Matthew?
Editor.
Editor? Okay, another editor. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Fair enough.
She's well spoken. She. What do you mean another editor?
I'm kidding. I'm just messing with you.
No, she's well spoken. She edits. She knows the language.
There you go. That's it for this week's voicemails. Again, you can leave us one at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you, even if it is just to say hi and to tell us to go shit in our hats. If you're stumped for what to chat with us about, a quick story is welcome. Next up, let's move on to Donut Money Donors and Patreon. We do have a patron this week.
Patreon.
And that person has opted out of letting us know who they really are, but they've called themselves Principal Lewis. Principal as in the principal of a school, Lewis. So I think we know what the job is, maybe. Or am I way on the wrong track, Matthew? Who's Principal Lewis and what do they do? Where are they from? What do they do?
Well, I gotta just think that he's a principal of a school.
Okay, fair enough. Which school, though? Where?
Some collegiate institute in Western Canada.
Okay. A collegiate institute. Matthew's non-committal on his response on this one.
Well, he kind of gave it away with principal, so it just threw me.
Okay. Okay, Principal Lewis.
Principal Lewis, we appreciate your principality and your patronage.
Well, there you go.
Thank you.
Next up, we have some donut money from a person named Mark Redford. Mark says, hello, Mike and Matthew. I sent you some donut money. If you look at my past messages to you, you will see that I requested that you do a show on Jennifer Zumach. I feel like she's been forgotten, and I feel like nobody knows her whole story, and I believe that it needs to be told. Although I know what happened to her to cause her death, I'm kind of not interested in what happened between the time we kissed and 5 years later when her husband was arrested in North Dufferin County with her partially... Oh, anyway, I am not even going to say what happened. Oh, boy.
You should look up that story.
I am definitely going to look up that story. So rest assured, Mark Redford, we're going to look into that because you had a connection to the victim. And I'm interested.
Thank you for the donut money, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Much appreciated. Should we give Mark a job?
Mark Redford. I think Mark is a sugar magnate.
A sugar magnet?
Yeah.
Like Red Path sugar kind of thing?
And maybe that's what gave it away. Yeah, red. I don't know. I just picture him like owning sugar factories.
Sugar. Well, everybody likes a little sugar. Sugar.
Do you know how big I'd be if I worked in a sugar factory?
Bigger?
I'd be spooning that stuff into my mouth all the time.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I love, like, just plain old sugar.
Did you ever make a brown sugar sandwich when you were a kid?
I did. We used to do peanut butter and sugar sandwiches, me and my cousin Scott.
I do toast with lots of butter and then about half an inch of sugar in between the slices. And
oh, my God, that was good.
When my mom wasn't home.
When your mom wasn't home. Another thing Scott and I used to do, this isn't the Scott who was on the show, another guy, Scott. We used to make what he called fizzy-ups. So they were orange juice with 7-Up in them.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Orange juice with ginger ale in it's nice as well.
Oh, that sounds really good.
Yeah, it's actually very delicious.
I'm not big on buying orange juice from Florida right now, but it might be something that I'm willing to try.
You can get it from China.
Chinese oranges?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
Absolutely.
Thanks to all our patrons and Donut Money donors, past and present, for your generosity. It helps to keep the show going. You can become a patron of Dark Poutine at patreon.com/darkpoutine. For a one-time donation, you can send us donut money via PayPal or interact using our email address, darkpoutinepodcast@gmail.com. If you don't already subscribe to the show, it would mean a lot if you did. You can easily find Dark Poutine on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. If you haven't gotten yours yet, my 2 books are available to order via links on the Dark Poutine website or anywhere fine books are sold. And speaking of darkpoutine.com, check it out for show notes and other cool stuff. We'd appreciate it if you gave Dark Poutine a like or a follow on Facebook and Instagram. Most importantly, thank you for listening. Tell your friends about us. Word of mouth is a powerful thing.
And that is it for this episode of Dark Poutine. So until next time, don't forget to be a good egg and not a bad apple.
Goodbye.
Bye.